Yeah, all good. Okay. Okay, cool. Right, I'm starting the recording too for the session. So just give it a couple more minutes. Right, okay. I think we'll start now, shall we? Right, okay. So, um, yeah, since coming back from Dubai, really, I've not actually taken much of a look at any of these charts, to be honest with you. So this is going to be this is going to be a really raw review of Bitcoin positioning, altcoins, probably look at equities a little bit as well. It's all going to be mostly high time frame analysis because, being honest and being quite frank, um, there's really there's really no change to the plan. Okay, and that plan was always that the 24th of August, which was Jackson Hole conference, that was going to be the local top as such, and from the 24th onwards, what we'd then see is, rate cuts being priced in, okay? Because obviously what came out of Jackson Hole conference was Jerome Powell was quite dovish, and he said that the chances are of a rate cut, that's what they were actually positioning for themselves, okay? So, initially we had a bit of that sell-off from the 24th, which we see. We had that sell-off. We, pretty much played that perfectly. And then from the 1st of September onwards, what we wanted to position in was that September was going to be the bottom formation. Okay. So, even early August to mid August, we were saying that September seasonally is one of the worst months for Bitcoin, for risk assets, especially for altcoins. But as soon as we only really got into September, so like the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of September, people were really only starting to catch on that then, whilst we were mentioning early August, mid August. So a lot of this sort of seasonal bias, I like to call it, you will see them front run. Okay, so now we talk about Q4, right? Seasonally, Q4 is some of the best. It's one of the best quarters for Bitcoin, one of the best quarters for altcoins, some of the best months for risk assets. And we will front run that now, which we are doing. So we've now had this bottom formation, which we plan for, which would happen in September. Okay, you can see 1st of September, which we had over here, which would mark the bottom. Okay, and that's what we were aiming for. September mark the bottom. That would be the bottom formation, and then rally into Q4. Right. Make note of what I've just said there. Rally into Q4, not rally start in Q4 or rally, bloody as we're already in Q4. These things are always front run. They're always front run. It's the same thing with September. It wasn't um, the market's going to top in September, right? No, the market would top before September. The market then usually bottoms out. Performance is still bad in September, but the market usually bottoms out in September, then rallies heading into Q4, and it continues on that trajectory, right? It doesn't just start. Obviously there is a few disparities over the years where sometimes it may just start in Q4 or may actually just top in September. It's never going to be 100% like everything, but that's typical seasonal bias. All right. Um, so then when you think Q4, we now rally into Q4. December then comes round. Okay. Christmas then comes round. January then comes round. And what you usually see during the Christmas period in January is that you'll see the markets will continue to rally into December, right? A whole part of Q4, because it sounds weird, but a lot of the institutions, a lot of the investors, a lot of the players with big bags who can move the markets, they're trying to accumulate as much cash and as much money as possible heading into Christmas because they want to go away in their nice little lodges in the bloody, I don't know, um, yeah, in the, don't know, winter wonderland or wherever it is, or they want to go away somewhere where it's nice and hot over Christmas, right? So all these big boys, all these big players, all the market makers, this is seasonality. So they front run the markets into Q4, send the markets higher, all with the plan of as soon as Christmas comes around, as soon as December comes around, they've got all this big stack of cash they can go and spend willy nilly on all these fancy things for the family, for the friends, for themselves. And then as soon as January comes around, again, a seasonality thing called January woes, everyone's depressed. Everyone is miserable because Christmas has just been, it was family time, it was friends time. And then when January woes comes around, the markets are very choppy. All right. So that's why you usually find January and February are not very great months typically to trade, right? Derek, how we doing, brother? How are you? You okay? Oh, oh, that's rough. That's rough. Um, so yeah, when January and February comes around, the markets typically tend to chop. It's just what happens. So, and then you have the likes of Q4, it's where it's typically a trending market, and that's what we're going to head into is a trending market. Um, so obviously another thing was a very important date was the 17th of September, okay, because that was rates decision, which was of course yesterday. Um, and very funny really looking on, sort of crypto Twitter and everything. And I don't know why people were expecting a 50 basis point cut. That was never happening. It was never going to happen. It was being priced in as 25 basis points. I don't, yeah. And then there's this other thing with a lot of people now that they expect that rate cuts and a number of rate cuts are positive for risk assets, okay? And that they're going to send risk assets higher. And you have to remember, risk markets in general are at all-time highs, and that was with no rate cuts this year, okay? We've only just had the first rate cut this year, and it was a 25 basis point cut. But the markets are at all-time highs anyway. So, okay, it's like, are you really expecting 100 basis points to 150 basis point cuts over the next year now? And that's going to really send the markets on a crazy, crazy run, even though we've already been on this crazy, crazy run. So, so yeah, listen, there's just a few things to keep note of, keep in mind. It's that whole seasonality, seasonal bias, seasonal tendencies in markets. Um, and then this whole thing with like interest rates and everything and rate cuts. 25 basis points cut was great. That's exactly what I would have wanted, was 25 basis points. Would not have wanted 50 or more. I think if we would have got 50, probably would have sold off. Probably would have sold off now. Um, got 25 basis points, cool. We probably might get another one maybe this year. Hopefully it's just 25 basis points. Or you might save the rest for next year. But just remember, markets are at all-time highs, regardless. So how positive is potentially 100 basis points, 150 basis points really going to be for markets, right? So, um, it's a completely different situation from like 2023 where markets were at the bottom and it was a bear market, right? We're still in this bull market. Risk assets are crazy bullish. It's still that, okay, well, this is the end, this is towards the end. But it's like we're kind of in probably not even the beginning of the end stage. It's more like mid, middle of the end. I don't know how to phrase it. That's where we probably are at the moment, and we're heading into that final phase of this run that we're in. So with Bitcoin at the moment, I quite like the look of Bitcoin, to be honest. We do have obviously we have this weekly. Well, in fact, thing I probably will mention first of all is, of course, 1st of September. This is where we wanted the bottom formation in September, right? Because I tweeted this loads, put loads of messages out on the Discord. I said 1st of September to 22nd is the time frame that I'd like to see the market bottom and begin to reverse, right? And that's what we're getting at the moment. Okay, so you can actually see that the reversal candle was obviously this candle here. So if we get rid of that, you can see, what the Bitcoin do. It obviously took this low that was over here. That was a bit of a terrible drawing. And you can see it just swept this low, which was there as well, right? And now we're beginning to reverse. Okay, so you have to think from the start of August. We have obviously these three down close candles, which we're now looking to reverse those down close candles. I think that we are now heading towards an all-time high, a new all-time high. So we're actually coming for this high, which is over here. Of course, we still have the weekly SFP, which is still intact. Of course, it's still intact. Why will it not be intact? But when you look at this from a CRT perspective, so candle range theory perspective, which is obviously one of these SMC concepts, you can see that what we've actually done is, let's snap that over to there and change. Okay, that's a little bit better. Right, so what you can actually see is we have where we form the weekly SFP, which is obviously from this candle high here. You can see that we wicked above twice. Okay, they're obviously very manipulative wicks. And you can see the candle body closures. Okay, what do the candle bodies do? They close below this high of this up close candle here. So we sweep the high, which is twice, get the candle bodies. We actually sweep it a couple of other times, but we're mainly interested in this wick and this wick over here. And we get the candle bodies closures below the candle range high, which is of course this high I've just mentioned. And then we trend towards which low? Okay, we trend towards this low, which is the candle range low. Okay, this up close candle. Right, we trend towards this low, we sweep the low, which we sweep here, and then we begin to reverse. Right, so the way you have to look at this from a sort of manipulation perspective is that the very manipulative candles are obviously this wick, and this wick. When you think of this from, think of how positive the sentiment would have been here and here. Okay, well, we're seeing a breakout from this high. Everyone's going long. Everyone and their mums, their donkeys, their dogs, everyone's going long here, thinking the market's going to break, Bitcoin's going to break out and break higher. And it's just vice versa, the same over here. Market thinks it's going to break lower and head towards, 90K or whichever, or even lower to sort of come further into weekly demand. And which is again something we mentioned on the stream, that market is likely going to come into weekly demand and then begin to bounce from, which it has done exactly that. And it was actually Derek who pointed that out, Rakindo, who pointed that out, the weekly demand from this down close candle. So we've begun to reverse now, and I think we're heading obviously towards a new all-time high. We're going to head to where the manipulation occurred, which is over here. One thing to probably keep note of right now is that we do have a weekly bearish imbalance, which is here. So obviously this is a sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency. Okay, so a SIBI, and this is a weekly SIBI. However, you can see at the moment we are actually just peaking above it. Okay, so obviously this weekly up close candle. Now, I want to see us close this weekly candle actually outside of this area, outside of this SIBI, I should say, this weekly imbalance. Okay, we close outside and then we head towards the high, which is over here, which will be a new all-time high. If we close inside, okay, which is completely fine when you're trading fair value gaps, imbalances, or anything, it's completely fine to see price peak its head above or below an imbalance, right? You have to look at it from a where does the candle body close, okay? So us just peaking our head above is completely fine. We could close inside the SIBI and then begin to trend down and lower again, all right? But if we close above, that is positive, okay? It begins to invalidate this weekly SIBI because then we've got a new weekly candle which is actually trading outside of the SIBI, outside of the imbalance, bearish imbalance, okay? If we close inside, then we've got the new weekly candle actually trading inside of it, and it just validates that this could be a bearish imbalance, and then we obviously continue sort of this downtrend and potentially downtrending structure, which I don't think is going to happen, okay, by weekly close. There's nothing that really Fed rate was obviously kind of like the big day that everyone was waiting for sort of a bit of direction in the market, to see what, Jerome Powell and the Fed actually do. And that's passed now. Fed's rates decision has passed. We got the 25 basis point cut. Market is reacting very, very nicely to it. Okay, not just Bitcoin, but so is equities as well. I could do with probably changing color settings back on this one, right? But so is equities, right? The market is reacting very positively to the 25 basis point cut. That's what we wanted. So I think market continues higher, just in overall. Risk markets in general continue higher and into October and into Q4 seasonality. But that's just something to keep on mind of at the moment, that we are actually in a weekly bearish imbalance. Okay, we are trading above it. We want to close above, and then we target obviously a new all-time high. We have the obviously the weekly CISD model, okay, which we've had and we've been tracking since March and April. We have higher targets, okay. Our higher targets, which is I'm expecting in Q4, is the -4 and -4.5 standard deviation target, which you can see is here. And that should put Bitcoin around 146 to 150 to 153. Right, so ultimately, that is my target for Q4. Okay, that's where I'd like to see Bitcoin. I'd like to see Bitcoin all the way up here, and then sort of be very nice if we got a bear market after that. May continue higher, may then head lower. Who knows? But that's my target at the moment. We've been pretty good with this weekly CISD model because it has pretty much tracked any major local top. Okay, like this one, we were prepared for Bitcoin to manipulate the previous all-time high, which would have been over here in January, around 109,000. We knew it would manipulate. We tracked that. Okay, we knew we had the -1.5 standard deviation target. It manipulated this high, right, which you can see here, met the -1.5 target, and then what did it do? It started to pull back. It pulled back into this weekly BISI, okay, which is a buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency. Pulled back into there. We had some couple of nice longs on Bitcoin, which were over here, and then we obviously traded it higher at that point. Okay, similar scenario here. We have the -2 and -2.5 standard deviation target, which is a very typical target for a CISD model, change in state delivery model. And we pretty much filled, which we did, we pretty much filled this entire target, okay? So you can see from this high, which is here, right? We filled that entire range, that entire target range we were looking for. And then what did Bitcoin begin to do? Well, it began to pull back, okay? So it was always on this pullback, it was always a case of how deep would the pullback be and where would it, pull back to? And obviously it just pulled back into weekly demand being this down close candle. It just took this low after taking the high here. Okay, all this is a range, okay, candle range theory, and then it's begun to reverse heading into September. So, Bitcoin looks pretty great in my view, in my eyes. Yes, we're in the weekly imbalance, but I think we continue to trade above it. I think we continue to trade higher now. I think we continue to trade and take this high over here. I think let's have a look at if there's anything on maybe the 2-day and the 3-day that we can possibly see. Let's have a look. Yeah, I mean, one thing you'll probably notice here is we did have this big 3-day imbalance, which was here, which obviously we retraced into, then had a bit of a bounce from. So you have to keep them. So, this is the same with fair value gaps. Doesn't matter what time frame you sort of trading them on. When you have a fair value gap, right, you only really want to see them actually really tested once, okay, and that gives you the reaction, right? This was obviously the reaction we wanted to trade into a new all-time high. You should never have expected the 3-day fair value gap, which is a bushy bullish fair value gap, to then hold as it pulled back again, right? Doesn't work like that. This is why I always say anything more than like 2 pullbacks or retests into a fair value gap or an imbalance, I don't like, because it lessens the probability of that zone, that imbalance actually being sort of held, okay, and giving us the reaction that we want. And this gave us the reaction we wanted first time into a new all-time high, right? Taking buy side liquidity, which is there. Obviously, as we know, we came for this low. I think even from a 2-day time frame, there's not really much to really look out for here, even from the 2-day. What you'll probably notice is that, yes, buy side liquidity, you can see big wick up where the candle bodies close, or they close below this low. Again, this is from the weekly time frame, CRT perspective. Then begin to pull back down to this low, which is here. And you can see we obviously have this 2-day swing failure, which is just there too, okay? Which you can see is just there, right? Okay, and then we began to obviously reverse at that point. We do have, in fact, but again, we've already sort of traded into this bullish fair value gap. Okay, we do actually have a 2-day buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency, which is there too. Okay, which is just here, right? But we've already traded into there, okay, and we've already given us the reaction. So it's, where do we head towards now, right? And that's exactly why I think we are actually heading towards a new all-time high. This is all positive structure right now. All this is positive structure. When we have fair value gaps, bullish fair value gaps, or bearish fair value gaps, you want to see them being held, okay? And you want to see positive momentum from them. This is positive momentum, because all we have from this bullish fair value gap is this down close candle. What does it do? It just wicks into it, okay? Wicks into it, bounces off, trades higher, right? So then when you think about the weekly bearish fair value gap, which of course we have here, it's a completely different sort of reaction that we've got at the moment, isn't it? Because if we really have bearish momentum in Bitcoin, then all you would really want to see is Bitcoin actually trade and wick into the bearish fair value gap and then test it and then continue lower, right? But we're actually trading inside of it and trading above it. So that's not bearish momentum, okay? It's a bit like here, right? You take this key high time frame level, which is the bullish fair value gap, buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency. What gave us conviction being long over here? Well, it was the reaction. It was the reaction in Bitcoin into this level, right? What does this down close candle do? Well, it just wicks. It wicks inside this level, this weekly imbalance. Real bullish momentum, trades higher. Okay, so that's exactly the sort of thing you want to see. All right, and that's why I think bulls still have momentum here because we've basically not done the opposite you'd want to see to be bearish, sort of to this. Okay, you'd kind of want to see the same structure as what we've got here, but over here for bearish momentum, right? So yeah, when you're trading fair value gaps and imbalances and inefficiencies, these are the things that you want to kind of look out for whether bulls have momentum or the bears have momentum, right? This again just feeds into like typical market structure type concepts from like the ICT smart money concepts perspective. Okay, let's have a look and see if there's anything on the daily, in fact, as well. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really on the daily, to be honest. We did have this down close candle here, which, to be honest, I wouldn't even say this is a change in state of delivery because it's weak. It'd be very, very weak for a change in state delivery. Um, because you don't, you sort of have consolidation here, and it took a very long time before price actually got above sort of this break of this down close candle here. So this is more like a market structure shift or change of character in price, right? Would not say this is a CISD, right? When we look at CISDs, we know this was a CISD over there, okay? That was a change in state delivery, right? That was a pretty perfect change in state delivery. Just keep in mind, this is the daily time frame. You can see we're kind of going through the time frames now, time frame alignment to actually support where price is going to head towards next. We had this bearish change in state delivery on the daily time frame, which was here, all right, after taking buy side liquidity there. So obviously we had this bearish CISD, and price obviously came to hunt this low, which was over here, right? I'm actually quite interested if we pulled a standard deviation projection. Where would the standard deviation? Where would that fall to give us a little bit of confluence as to where price had went to? Yeah, so you can see a little bit like the weekly CISD we've got for Bitcoin, where we've got the -4 and the -4.5 standard deviation target, which is obviously higher all the way up here. This bearish daily CISD, okay, which you can see had obviously held, and it was a pretty great one. Price had obviously traded, and it was hunting this low, which was over here, and you can see it traded within the -1.5 towards the -2 standard deviation target. Okay, so that target was met. That's when we began to reverse, and that's obviously we've now sort of reversing this bearish CISD structure into a more positive bullish structure right now. Okay, but I would not say that this is a bullish CISD because of the formation. Right, you can see how different the formation is in this daily CISD to this being a CISD, right? Completely different sort of structures, yeah. You would want to see, again, like this, two up close candles, you get the one big down close candle, closes below the closing price here, and that's the break, right? But you don't get that. One big down close candle, we consolidate, okay, we consolidate, which is there. We consolidate here, get a bit of a bounce up, still fail to close above the open price there. Trade above it, fail to close above, consolidate there. Yeah, so it's just not a good looking CISD, right? I wouldn't even focus on this being any sort of bullish CISD or anything like that. So yeah, ultimately I think Bitcoin is still heading higher, right? We're bullish Q4 from a seasonality perspective, and I don't really think, obviously we're trading mid-range at the moment, right? If you think of this as just one big range that Bitcoin's trading in, we're trading within the equilibrium level, right? If you've ever heard of deal and range theory, which is a bit like CRT, it's another concept that I trade. If we pull from the swing high here to the swing low, which is over here, okay, you're actually pulling it from where manipulation occurs on both sides of the market, okay? So deal and range theory, which is just there. Let's put that in reverse, right? So when we're trading deal and range theory, which again is a little bit like candle range theory. It's another one of these derivative concepts of ICT that works pretty well. What you want to see is where manipulation occurs in the market. Okay, so manipulation occurs from this high over here. Manipulation occurs from the daily swing failure, which is there. You know, we had the bearish change in state delivery here. And we know from the weekly time frame we was hunting this low. Okay, so we came, hunted this low, which you can see here, obviously trended towards that low. And then where does manipulation occur? Manipulation occurs, which is just over here. Okay, so that's where you pull the swing high, where manipulation is, to swing low, where manipulation is. Another way of obviously identifying where manipulation occurs from a perspective of, you know, ICT and all that good stuff is the wicks. Okay, wicks tell the story. Wicks do the damage. Candle bodies tell the story. You can see we just wick above. Candle bodies close below this high, and of course below this high. Similar thing here. Price wicks below this low. Wicks below these two lows. Candle bodies close back above the lows of interest, and then we begin to trend higher again. Right. So Bitcoin at the moment is in this sort of no trade zone. Okay, because we are just sort of equilibrium level, which is called a deal and range mid. So really positioning in 20 trades, not really favourable. We're just caught right in the middle of a range at the moment. So I'm not exactly looking for shorts or longs. You either want to be looking for longs into premium, which is obviously up here, maybe where manipulation occurs. So, you know, shorts over here, or if price begins to pull back maybe into discount, then you can look for potentially longs within discount. Okay. Which, you know, again, in September, market might begin to pull back a little bit again. Okay. Might begin to pull back, heading towards monthly close, and then have this sort of bounce heading into October, and then we begin to trend higher again. Right. But, you know, as I said, September is the bottom formation, and that's exactly what we've still got at the moment. But yeah, so if you're looking for shorts, obviously look for shorts towards the highs, look for longs towards the lows, which is over here. You know, don't just go short and sort of any high. You want to actually see manipulation occur, just like over here. You want to look for confirmations, you want to look for signals to be able to go short. You just won't short if we put in a new all-time high, right? Because we might actually just break out of this range, right? Break out of this range that we've got, and then head to a new all-time high. Okay. So what else do we have here? What else can we go through here? Aside from Bitcoin, equities maybe. Right. Okay. So S&P, obviously we're still trending higher, which we knew we would. We've got the NQ, which again is still obviously trending. Risk assets are in a trending market. So it looks like we're going to just head. Why is that into percentages? That's a little bit weird. Let's go back to regular. So yeah, NQ, Nasdaq still trending higher. I'm not really interested in either of these now. I'm really not interested in either NQ or ES. Okay. Both we knew were putting a new all-time high. We knew we'd head into a trending market. They are in a trending market. They're going to continue higher. My interest is in small caps. Okay, small cap equities. So it's same thing with gold. We knew gold to put a new all-time high, right? And I think you know, sort of obviously D dot looks at gold a lot as well. We knew gold would put in the all-time high in, right? And gold is a leading indicator for where risk markets are going to head towards, right? So gold puts in a new all-time high, NQ and S&P follow, they've followed, then you find Bitcoin follows, Bitcoin's followed. Now what we want to see is, especially for the likes of altcoins, or alt season, quote unquote alt season, which everyone is frothing at the mouth over, you now want to see an all-time high in the likes of the Dow Jones, which is YM, okay, small cap equities, or in the Russell 2000, all right, which again is small cap equities, right? And you can see here, I made a little note that we wanted to close above here, which of course we did do. Obviously, it doesn't make much sense looking from this time frame. But yeah, again, Russell 2000. So we actually want to close above this high, and then we want to begin to target this high, right? Again, Russell is in this sort of beginning this trending phase right now. You can, if you take sort of this low, which is over here, okay, and then we can actually take this high, which is there. We can take where we began to consolidate a little bit, which is there as well. You can mark out where, with the Russell, where price actually begins to, Treppy, how we doing, brother? Where price begins to manipulate these very key highs or very key lows, all right? Begins to manipulate these highs and lows, and they're typically reversal points in the market, right? And that's exactly what we had, or which was over here, right? Began to reverse. Obviously, I had the manipulation where the market began to consolidate, which was over here. Again, markets consolidating here. We form this low. We come manipulate the low, right? We manipulate that low, and then we begin to reverse, right? So where are we now heading towards? Okay, well, we're actually heading towards this high, which is here. Okay, this is our target. This high is the target. And we want to see price convincingly, very convincingly, which I mean it is at the moment. We want to see it take this high and trend obviously towards this high, which is over here, which again, I think it does, right? If you think how the rotation of capital, rotation of money through markets, through risk markets, risk assets, the likes of the Russell and the likes of the Dow, they're not going to hit all-time highs but before large caps, are they? Before the likes of NQ, before the likes of S&P. You have to think the money trickles down. So when gold hits an all-time high, that money then begins to trickle down into other markets. And then when the likes of the large cap indexes, so NQ and the S&P, they hit all-time highs, the money begins to trickle down into other markets, okay, into Bitcoin and stuff like that. Bitcoin hits all-time highs, money begins to trickle down and trickle elsewhere, so like Ethereum, right? And that's just how it works, right? That's just how the money rotates itself. So now the money is obviously rotating into the likes of YM, right? It's rotating into the likes of the Russell, okay, the Russell 2000, and other small cap equities. So now you want to see them all put in new all-time highs and convincingly put in new all-time highs, which again, as I said, I think we're obviously going to put in a new. So yeah, I mean, 2024 was actually the first sort of I mean, that was a two year high. So November 2024 was actually a 2-year high, and if you remember last November for altcoins, okay, so XRP and ADA and all these other large cap altcoins, what did they do last November? Right, late October into November, that's where you're seeing those really big moves in all these large cap altcoins, these blue chip altcoins. You're seeing that big mega move. I mean, there was like VeChain that was up like 50, it was like 30% in like a single day, and it was like 50, 60% over 2 days, right? You're seeing these crazy, crazy moves in altcoins. And again, look at Russell 2000. Russell 2000 obviously put this 2 year high in, which is, like, look at 2022, right? 2022 into 2023 into 2024. This is the 2 year high. So, and then altcoins followed. So this is why I keep banging on about on like Twitter or like in the Discord that I don't really care about NQ or S&P now. What I really care about is seeing how the Russell 2000 performs, seeing how the Dow Jones performs, and how does that translate? How does that money trickle down into altcoins? Because obviously that's what everyone's waiting for now is altcoins, alt season. So I think that, yes, what we're going to see is we're going to see the Dow actually hit an all-time high now, is it? I mean, to be honest, did just look at the Dow and it did look like it hit an all-time high. Yeah, so Dow has actually hit it. Yeah, so Dow has actually hit an all-time high. Of course, which you can see there. So we have actually hit an all-time high in the Dow. So now it's the Russell. Want to see an all-time high in the Russell, right? Again, November. Look at the November, right? This was last November for the Dow. Okay, last November into December. Then what did the market, like I mentioned again earlier about seasonality in the market, what did the market begin to do into December? Began to pull back, right? Began to pull back into December and then continue the pullback into the likes of January and February, right? January woes, seasonality, seasonal tendencies, right? But we had a great October, November. So, and obviously this little bit of trend and structure that we had obviously here in the Dow began in the likes of August, September, again, which, again, we're kind of done here. We had this bit of a pullback in July, starts again in August, September, right? So we're likely going to put some high, don't know where, not really interested in exactly where, but we're likely going to put in a high, new all-time high somewhere higher, higher than where we are now. And then we begin to pull back again in the December and into the January. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it did look like it put an all-time high in. So yeah, just keep in mind that was last November. Same with the Russell. Russell put in a 2 year high. The Dow put in a new all-time high in November. So we're already there. That's Q4 seasonality is here, right? It's here. This is exactly where we're heading into. We're heading into new highs. We're heading into new highs in risk markets in general, right? But obviously, where everyone's interested is when's alt season coming, right? But the one thing that you have to know about alt season is, like I mentioned about the trickle, where money trickles down from gold to S&P to NQ to the Dow to Bitcoin to Ethereum, blah 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 blah. Right at the bottom of that list of where the money flow comes sort of down to is alt season and altcoins. Yeah. Um, so you have to keep that in mind. You have to keep that in mind. Everyone's talking about alt season and everyone's banging on about when's alt season happening. It's one of those things, yes, nobody knows. Nobody knows for sure. But we're looking at the signals and the confirmations in the market right now, and we have all the confirmations and signals we need to be risk on altcoins, to be mega risk on altcoins, in my opinion. And this is exactly why September was the bottom formation. You spend the likes of August, September, dollar cost averaging back into positions. Well, you spend time actually exiting positions in August, late August. Then you begin to average back into positions in September. And then you ride the market up again, heading into Q4, right? Which is exactly what we're doing. Exactly what we're doing now. So when Q4 does come around, when Q4 does come around, and when this alt season does happen, please don't go holding thinking the market's going to continue rallying into late December, into January, because I will return to these posts on Twitter and I'll say January woes, and you should know exactly what I mean when I say January woes, because it's a very real thing. Um, so, so yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it's one of these things where there's actually not much else to say. Well, we're going to look more technically at some other charts now, but as far as positioning goes, we're long. We're long into Q4 now. Okay, we're spot long. We're position long. We're waiting for new highs. Doesn't mean all your altcoins are going to hit new all-time highs. Don't even dare for 1 second believe ADA is going to put in a new all-time high, because I don't believe it will do. But it'll put in a good 2-year high. Okay, it'll put in a great new high over the last couple of few years. But don't think everything's going to hit a new all-time high, even when alt season comes around. So one other thing to note, which is very, very important, is what is happening in Q4. What is happening in Q4? What's a very, very important narrative that's happening in Q4? Yeah, oh yeah, very nice. Yeah, what is happening in Q4? Does anyone know what is happening in Q4 in October, specifically in October, and for altcoins? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, yeah, ETFs. So it's going to be it's a pretty great narrative. So just look at Bitcoin. In fact, look at Bitcoin and Ethereum yourself, and look online. When were ETFs approved? What did Bitcoin look like before the ETFs were approved? And then when there was obviously a lot of talking about ETFs, and then do the same for Ethereum, right? Because the market front runs those decisions. That's why everyone says, "Oh, sell the news event," right? Because with a lot of these big events and sell the news events, when we actually say that, what it actually means is the market is front running that day. It's front running that event ahead of the event, and then when the event comes, it's obviously like a big nothing burger, right? But it's actually all the retail people, the retail traders, and the retail investors that are like very deflated because that event's come around and the market's not continued higher than what it should have, right? So same with ETFs. It would have been the same with Bitcoin. Would have been the same with Ethereum. These ETFs, they generate hype, they generate excitement, and all those guys on Wall Street and who are sitting there with the bell, and they're getting all these calls rang through to them, and they're getting all the alpha first from all their buddies and what have you, and just on the trading floor, and they're all talking between themselves. They receive. You have to think a bit like how money trickles down into risk assets. So does the information. So does the information. The information from Wall Street, the information from all the trading desks. It trickles down, and the people to find out last, a bit like altcoins with alt season. The people that find out last are retail, because actually the decision's already been made, the approvals are already there. Wall Street already know, the guys on the trading floor already know, all their doctors, dentists know before you, because they go to the dentist, have the teeth sorted, and then they end up speaking to their dentist about, oh yeah, there's going to be ETF approvals, it's already confirmed. Then their dentist who's got mega money, and their doctor who's got mega money, private doctor, they're going then obviously go fill their bags up. It's a very, you don't think it works like that, but that's how it works. Um, a really great book is Market Wizards. Absolutely fantastic book. with all the interviews with all the top traders and investors since the early 1970s. An absolutely fabulous book, and they even speak about, in one particular interview, that's what they even speak about, how this information trickles down from the likes of the trading desks and the trading floors and all the Wall Street boys and New York Stock Exchange and everything like that. And then how it trickles down, all that information, and it will trickle down to the doctors because that's what they'll speak to them about, is conversation. But then the last people to always find out is when it's already hit the news, right? And that's the retail. The retail find out on the day, right? The retail have no alpha. And then, there's a great guy on YouTube that I watch. I'll have to put his link in, who's a quant trader, and he's in his early 40s. And he says exactly the same thing, when he's on the floor in trading, and he's a quant trader. And again, he talks about how this information and how why the game's so unfair for retail traders. And it's this whole, you get incredible alpha when you're actually on the trading floor and when you're actually at Wall Street, because you find everything out first, right? But then you guys, you little fishies, retail, yours are always going to be at a mega disadvantage. And this is exactly something he talks about, this quant trader too. So yeah, ETFs, again, a little bit like September, where everyone's front run that, the market's actually front run that seasonality thing in September. ETFs are going to be the same thing. The market will front run. The market will front run the ETFs, right? Because we know at the ETFs, there's a final approval date. There's a final approval date for ETFs, and that is towards the end of October for the likes of Cardano, the likes of XRP, the likes of Solana, Dogecoin, Litecoin, AVAX. What else is there? I'm definitely sure there's a couple of others. And they're all around the end of October, and that's the final approval date with the SEC. So the market will front run those decisions. It will 100% front run those decisions. So, it's a little bit like now. Okay, have we reversed a little bit early in September? Don't know. It depends if if Bitcoin puts in a new all-time high in September. I would personally be surprised, but that would be a full reversal. So yes, maybe we did start actually reversing a little bit early if we do put in a new all-time high. So then you could probably imagine that, yes, we continue to trend in October and trend higher in October. But how does November and December then really look? Okay, could look completely different. So just, again, keep that in mind. Mark that down. ETFs, late October, is something that's 100% going to be front run by the market, by all the big boys, because they'll find out first. They'll know first that, they're 100% going to get approved. So they can go and they can go position themselves accordingly. And then retail find out the very last on decision day that yes, they've all been approved, and that's where they all get excited and start throwing the bids in. Then the market sells off a little bit. But it's going to be an absolutely fabulous narrative. It'll be a fabulous narrative to play. So, like, my positioning currently is, like Chainlink, ETFs for Chainlink, ADA. I am very, very happy being positioned in the likes of them. A little bit of Litecoin. I'm not really interested in the likes of Solana or anything like that, or XRP, personally, because they're too high, right? They're too high. Nano Solana futures. That's new. Never ever seen that before. That's very new. Yeah, so like the likes of Sol, I am not going to position in Sol for the ETFs. Right, it's already too high. Same with XRP. I'm not going to position in XRP. The time to position in them is already gone. Probably another thing to mention is, what's another confirmation signal that you want to see for alt season? It's a bit like ETH. we mentioned ETH. We want to see ETH put in a new all-time high, manipulate the all-time high, and then trend into a new all-time high again, right? Well, Solana, we want to see Solana do what? We want to see Solana put in new highs now in the market, put in new highs, and then it begins to cool down. And it's that thing of the money trickles down. It's a bit like Bitcoin into ETH, ETH into Solana, Sol into, everything else. So this is why I kept on tweeting about Sol rotations, Bitcoin rotation, right? That's what you want to see in September. Sol getting rotation, Bitcoin getting rotation. Then when we head into October, it's then altcoins that get rotation, right? ETF altcoins in particular get rotation. So Solana is doing exactly what I thought it would do. Perfect. This is exactly what I want to see with Solana, and I want to see Solana put in a new yearly high and break this high now. And then just continue higher. Really would be very nice. I mean, we might just manipulate this high and then pull back a little bit more before then continue higher again. Obviously, the all-time high. Oh no, yeah. So this would actually be a new all-time high. Yeah, forgot. Yeah, we did actually put an all-time high in for Sol. So yeah, I'd love to see Sol put in a new all-time high again, manipulate like we've seen with ETH. Again, manipulate the all-time high again to pull back. But that pullback might only happen January lows time. Okay. But for now, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to see, what we wanted to see. Let's have a look very quickly at XRP. And obviously, like it's one of these things where you're not really going to go long on Sol here, are you? Because it's not in a very good place to be long. XRP didn't actually come as low as I would have liked, right? I would have really liked XRP to trade into the OTE, which is the optimal trade entry model, which is down here within this big weekly BISI, buy side inbound, sell side inefficiency. Trade right into it, right into that OTE level, and then trade higher again. Okay, but what you can obviously see is we manipulated this low, which is here. Okay, we got the weekly swing failure, which is from this down close candle, which is here. And then what did we do? Well, we began to reverse. Okay, so yes, whilst this was a target, right, you have to be, just like I said in the Discord yesterday with Harmu, once you realise with the likes of trading and investing and everything, you have to be very dynamic in your approach. You have to be able to adjust your positioning, your positions, your trades, your take profit levels as new information is presented to you. Okay? You cannot just go, ADA's hitting $12 and I'm selling them. Right? Because all you're doing is you're fixing a point in time. You're fixing a point, not even in time. You're just fixing a point, a price tag that you're going to sell at. But that might only come in 20 years' time. And what you've actually missed in between then is 80 cents to $1.80 to $1.80 to $1.20 to $1.22. These ginormous swings, $1.22, $2 to $2 to $1.50. Humongous swings in price, and you've missed them. Right? It's the same thing with trading. If you fix your R return, you'll take profit, and it's fixed at 3R every single time. So the 3R risk of what you're, 3R return of what you're risking. And if that's consistently fixed, then you're not trading. You're not being dynamic. You're not trading based on new information presented to you. You are just going, I'm selling at 3R. I'm selling at this price or at this percentage gain every single time. And if that doesn't happen, I'm not happy with it. Right? Which is so wrong. So your mentality as a trader or as an investor, a spot investor, if you're very dynamic in your approach and in where you want to actually begin to exit the market, then you'll never really get caught out, right? But obviously this thing with the likes of alt season, oh no, I'm waiting for alt season, and if it doesn't happen, then What are you going to do? If alt season doesn't happen, what are you going to do? Either might go to $1.80 over the next couple of months, but that might not be an alt season still. That could be like $1.80 over 2 months, which is not a massive percentage gain every single day, okay, or every single week. So if that's, could be a really slow climb. So you're not going to sell because it doesn't feel like alt season. So yeah, with XRP, if I was around and not actually in Dubai, then yes, seeing this price begin to reverse here, we have already traded into the weekly inefficiency which we wanted. We manipulated the lows. That's where you would have looked to put, been long XRP, for example, right? Even though I was targeting down here, if I was around to actually see this, or went, boom, okay, we're actually not coming that low now in XRP. We're going to begin to reverse and trade a bit higher again. Okay, this is being dynamic in your approach. So now I can happily just get rid of that. I can just get rid of all that because that new information that's been presented to me supports the market to manipulate these lows and head higher, which we've done, into the weekly inefficiency. Okay. And again, a little bit like earlier, I mentioned about fair value gaps and inefficiencies and imbalances. When do you want to see bullish momentum? Would XRP be really bullish if it traded and filled this entire imbalance here? Would that have been bullish structure? No, it wouldn't have been. Right? You'd want to see this, exactly this, what we've seen here happen. We trade into it, we manipulate internal range liquidity, which is this low, and then we begin to trade higher. But if we traded all the way to fill this gap, then it would have been so unbelievably choppy trading in, right? It would have been so unbelievably choppy that it might have just went on for months, right? Or it could have been, you've just lost this level and then you actually head lower at that point, right? Um, right. Let's have a look at some other altcoins then, shall we? So, ORD or ORDI. Don't actually know. Oh, that's the wrong chart. That's Bitcoin. So I don't actually know what this is. Is this AI or is it something like that? Um, okay. So, so what I'd say is with the likes of, is this the best chart to look at, or have we got a better chart to look at? That's a little bit. That's a little bit better. Is there a better one? Let's have a look at KuCoin. I imagine it's not been on exchanges for very long. Let's have a look at this one. That's that's a little bit better. Bybit. No, yeah, I like charts with plenty of data. You know, historical data. Obviously, this goes back to 2023 by the looks of it. We'll just work with this. Okay, we'll just work with this. Um, so what I would say with this is that I don't know what this altcoin is, by the way. Okay, so I don't know if it's AI or anything like that. So I'm going to look at it. Oh, is this ordinals? Is it? Mm, right. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. I see. I see. Yeah. I don't really know what is the narrative like with Bitcoin ordinals at the moment. I've not. I mean, to be honest, I never really ever kept up with ordinals. Yeah. 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 Mm, yeah. The token. Right. Okay. So yeah. Right, I see. So yeah, this must be the token that started off as normal. Right, okay. Yeah, I see. So I mean, this could be, yeah. So this is kind of like potentially one of these. I'll look at it purely from technical perspective. Um, I think actually the person who requested this is had to leave to because they're busy with something else. But um, it's a bit like the whole NFT thing. Obviously, like my position with like NFTs and stuff like that is they're dead. They're never ever going to come back around ever again. Um, yes, there might be a little bit of excitement at some point of time again with NFTs, probably right at the tippy top of the cycle, because they're more of like this exclusivity sort of thing, a bit like a Rolex watch, where it's sort of, oh, they're buying really expensive NFTs. So I'd imagine it's a similar thing with ordinals that it might come around again at some point as this thing, but it's probably going to be at the tippy top of the cycle when all the likes of celebs and everything like that are back involved and they're buying things because they've made loads of money through crypto and what have you, or like the influencers and everything. But anyway, from purely technical point of view, we're going to try and actually fly through this one so we can move on to Ondo. Is obviously you got a monthly swing failure which is there. You have got all right. So right, okay. So the harmonic fib traders seem to like it, right? Oh, seem to like this one in particular. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Very interesting. Right, very interesting. Right, so this then obviously must be the. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research on this then. Maybe this is like the possibly number one token, is it? Bitcoin ordinals. If other people are trading it, then it did have futures, didn't it? I'm sure I've seen. Oh, I don't know if I've seen. I mean, it's got perps, so yeah, okay. Ah, right. Yeah, okay, I see. I see, I see. Yeah. All right, it's got perps on Binance. Jesus Christ. Right, okay. So I'm gonna have to actually do a little bit of research into this one now. Okay then. Well, purely from a technical trading point of view, monthly swing failure, which is over there, of course, this is manipulation. You expect price to reverse, which it does. Creates these large, big imbalances, which you can see here. Big inefficiency. What do we call this? This is called a measuring gap, right? I mean, I don't even know what market cap this coin is, which makes me a little bit sick, actually not knowing what the market cap is, because it could be like 10k market cap, and then I'm doing ICT concepts on it. But we're going to continue moving it along anyway. Um, this is what we would call a measuring gap, right? A measuring gap because you go break this high. This is a bit of this like monthly consolidation structure over here. So you'd say this is a bit like characteristics of a measuring gap. Price begins to trade higher. What you have here, again, you have this monthly swing failure. Okay, monthly swing failure, a bit similar to actually what we had with Bitcoin. Okay, similar very scenario where you've got the double purge on the high, which is here, which are actually just consolidating just under this high, which is right there. And then we begin to drop, right? Because you have to think this structure that we've actually got going on over here, consolidating at new all-time highs, or at all-time highs, should I say, it's not bullish, is it? Right? Doesn't take Einstein to understand that. It's common sense when you look at it. It's very distributive structure. Okay, when you consolidate at all-time highs, and then you consistently manipulate into a new all-time high, but then close back below. All right. So then obviously the market is going to look to begin to do what? Well, reverse the big impulsive structure back down. So your your goal at that point is to think, and this is like typical bull to bear kind of like structure in the market is when you have these very manipulative moves at new all-time highs or new all-time lows or new lows, then you want to see where price possibly could reverse. And this is why I like the idea and concepts of like inefficiencies and imbalances, or the likes of order blocks or other PD arrays, premium discount arrays, because we can point out straight away we've got this very large imbalance, inefficiency, and this is exactly what we trade into, which is right there. Okay, and we're now doing what? Well, we're consolidating. Okay, so we're now obviously just consolidating within this big bullish buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency, or measuring gap, because we're broken this high. So we're now just consolidating. So obviously I don't know if the likes of this is going to put in a new all-time high, because I don't know enough about them. But if I was to, if I was to look at this and go, okay, well, is it a good time to potentially buy? Well, we're in a bullish fair value gap, buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency. This large gap, which is here, this is kind of like where you would expect to begin to position yourself again. So if we look at the 2 week and see if we notice anything on the 2 week, I'm gonna have to stay in logarithmic still. You can see that we have the 2 week swing failure, which is there again. 2 week swing failure, which is held there. So we've got overlapping swing failures. It adds confluence to where the market's potentially going to reverse. And what else do we have, which might give us a little bit of confluence to? Okay, so we've got obviously a bit of a 2 week swing failure, which is there. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, yes, we did trade a little bit into this inefficiency, which is here, this 2 week inefficiency, this 2 week gap there. Okay, which we've obviously had a bit of a bounce, but sort of away from. This downtrend structure is obviously probably what we're going to potentially retrace now, right? And again, this is kind of like one of those things where, is Q4 seasonally bullish? Yes. Are we bullish heading into Q4? Yes. Is the apply, sort of apply these kind of like these thoughts to all the charts? Is the market consolidating? Yes. Is this accumulation? Possibly. Doesn't look very nice for accumulation. You'd want to see these lows manipulated, then bounce a bit higher again. But this is consolidation, right? Downtrend structure, consolidation. So do we continue lower, hunt these lows, or do we now reverse and continue higher into Q4 seasonality? Well, I would go to bet, yes, we are probably going to continue higher now, because we've traded into this big weekly inefficiency. We've manipulated this down close candle, began to reverse from, and we're just consolidating. Okay, we know we've got a downtrend structure here with plenty of sort of these little bearish fair value gaps that we can go and sort of retest. So, I mean, it's one of these things. Is it going to put in a new all-time high? I don't know. I'm not a clue. And I think with the likes of a lot of other charts and a lot of other altcoins, would I even look to position myself possibly in this? Again, it's one of those things where I'm actually not really too sure, to be honest. Weekly time frame, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really on the weekly either. Again, you can just tell it's consolidating, right? And again, it's this whole thing with impulsive structures. This is a big impulsive structure which we began to retrace. We're now consolidating. So where's it going to go to next? Well, it's likely going to climb higher because Q4 is bullish anyway. I mean, it's quite funny really, because if you take the likes of Ondo was not similar in this retrospect, but again, like consolidation, then expansion. This is the whole point with the likes of power of three. You expect accumulation, manipulation, then distribution, i.e. expansion higher. But even from this structure that's here, we've not really got that manipulation, which I'd have liked to have personally seen to sort of validate that accumulation is actually happening. Because at the moment, this is just consolidation, right? So it could still break either way. I mean, if I looked at here, Ignore the little yellow arrows, by the way. Ignore them. I'm just testing something for the Discord. So if you take Audi, then oh, hold on a minute. I'm gonna have to change back to 200. Yeah, so yeah, with the likes of Audi or ORDI, obviously you can see here we have actually flipped to a bull regime, which is just right there. Let's flip that actually back to 50, and then let's have a look. Yeah, okay, so you can see that we are actually in a bull regime, right, according to the regime detection, which is the 200, 200-day SMA and the 20 or the 50 moving average. Just keep it nice and simple. And you can see we are actually in this bit of a bull regime now for Audi, okay, which is the same across all our coins. We are in bull regimes now. So yeah, it's one of these things, isn't it? Obviously, we are consolidating, even from the daily time frame. You can see this is just consolidation, right? So what follows consolidation? Well, it's some sort of expansion move, isn't it? So do we expand higher into Q4? Probabilities do favour that, okay? It's just one of those things, isn't it? Would you prefer to be positioned in something else that might have a bigger narrative? Right, should we have a look at Ondo? Ondo. Again, ignore the yellow arrows. We already know Ondo was in a bull regime. We've known that for a little bit of time now. We can see the last bull regime was over here. We can see we had a bit of these fake outs in the bull regimes over here. This is obviously the regime cross. So the white moving average is the 50 moving average. Okay, the green and red line is the 200-day SMA. The reason why we use 200-day SMA, especially for the likes of Bitcoin, the S&P, NQ or anything, is because it's great for assets that have a long, sort of a long historical data that the 200-day SMA can actually work from, right? Simple moving average. Which Ondo doesn't necessarily have a long sort of historical data because it only lasts till 2024, but it's fine. Okay, you typically want to target over a couple of years, few years. So Ondo, we know it as a bull regime. If we have a look at actually the Ondo chart, because as you might know, Ondo is one of my biggest. I'm on the wrong Ondo chart. Ondo is actually one of my biggest bags at the moment. Yeah, so when I have been posting about Ondo, I have said that you want to be averaging into Ondo when Ondo is doing what? When it's consolidating. Consolidation. Okay. Consolidation. All right. And again, we're using a stealing range theory concept. Manipulation of this high, weekly swing failure. We can get rid of that. That must be for a different time frame. We have manipulation of this low, which is here. Okay, to create a new low, which is here. So we draw it from the highest high to the new lowest low in the market, and then all we look for is the asset trading at a discount, extreme discount in this case. Okay, then that's when we want to begin to average into positions. We want to begin averaging into longs, and we want to trade it to where, well, we want to trade it back up to premium, okay, or into a new all-time high. So whilst we are still consolidating, right, I'm actually not buying any more Ondo. I'm done accumulating Ondo. I am obviously now prepared and waiting for the expansion move, right? And I believe that expansion move is obviously going to come into Q4. is going to happen in Q4, you can actually see that we have here, if you can notice here, we have a number of inefficiencies. Can you see? Can you see all those inefficiencies? Weekly, 3-day, I believe we have, was it the daily? Yeah, got the daily, which is there. Anyway, a lot of those little white boxes that you can see here, they are overlapping inefficiencies, okay? Overlapping bullish fair value gaps. Like I've mentioned before, when we have overlapping inefficiencies or overlapping fair value gaps in the market, that strengthens the probabilities that the market is going to reverse, right? Overlapping inefficiencies is a very nice magnet, is the wrong way to use an ICT concept, but it is a very nice magnet for price to actually draw towards to, like it does here, and like it does again here, into those overlapping inefficiencies, and then continue the trend, which is obviously higher at this point. So yeah, Ondo I'm long, I'm spot long. I think Ondo's worth 25% of my portfolio. Well, it was at least before, obviously heading to the buy. Whether it's more now, I don't know. But I'm not going to be buying any more Ondo, okay? Because we have already left extreme discount. Extreme discount is this level, okay? Extreme discount is this level here. We're now in the next level, okay, which you can see price is actually traded, retested, which is there. Okay, you can actually see we've got a 3-day fair value gap, which is there as well. Can you see that 3-day fair value gap? That 3-day gap, right, which is just at the extreme discount level, that very spotty level there, horizontal level. You can see we're traded into it, right? We're now in the discount, okay, not extreme discount, but discount. I'm not buying any more Ondo. I'm now positioning Ondo, waiting for it to trade higher, okay, which I believe it is obviously going to trade higher. The next, of course, level would be the dealing range mid, which is the equilibrium level, which is 0.5, and then you want to see it trade into premium or into a new all-time high, okay? But again, this whole thing of market structure, when do you want to position long? You want to position long when the market is doing what? When it is consolidating, okay? When it is accumulating, right? This is accumulation, this is consolidation, this was the low to look out for, we got that low, and now you wait for what? You wait for the big expansion move higher, okay? And then you trade that expansion move and you trade it to a new all-time high, or at least back to premium. Is there anything else? I mean, you can see how choppy this price action was from a monthly time frame for Ondo. Very, very, very choppy. I mean, Ondo just as a whole really has been pretty awful to be positioned in as such. Yeah, it's been pretty awful to be positioned in as such, as sort of like that was a very big wick because there was a lot of hype at that point in time. But yeah, if you just take now, I think Ondo's preparing for that expansion move, in my opinion, and we have been sort of in this phase of consolidation now since early this year. So the market's going to break one way. It's not going to continue like this for another year, another 2 years, right? The market is gearing up for a break. Is it going to break to the upside, or is it going to break to the downside? Chances are it breaks to the upside, okay? And again, we just look for those other confirmations that, well, should we position long? Well, it's at extreme discount. Yes, we'll position long. Does it trade into overlapping inefficiencies? Yes, it trades into overlapping inefficiencies. Again, you want to trade long at that point. So yeah, we're just waiting for kind of this thing of actually seeing some new highs this year. Of course, which will be a break of $1.60, and new highs into obviously hopefully new all-time highs. But again, on those kind of like another chart where it's sort of there's not much going on. There's really not much going on. It's kind of like I'm not interested in being short over here, right? I've just spent months accumulating within consolidation, and there's nothing really over here that's telling me, oh, to go short for a little bit lower, right? So I'm kind of like I am a bit like with Bitcoin, it's sitting mid-range. I'm very neutral with the market at the moment as far as, day trading and intraday trading goes. I'm just kind of relaxing and not really bothering as such. But as far as the positioning goes, like short term, mid term, and even long term, I'm long. Okay. Um, so is there any other charts that we should take a look at? Is there any other charts that we should look at? I realise this has been probably I've probably rambled on a little bit much, haven't I? Well, again, either it's like again sitting with an equilibrium. Well, I mean that's previous week range, that to be fair, which is obviously long gone now. But yeah, I mean a lot of you guys know the score with like previous week closes and everything like that, and where you want to see the candle close and what have you. Same with the monthly candle. Where do you want to see it close? In fact, one thing I will probably note with Ada, to be honest, is can I get rid of a lot of these drawings because it's very, very messy? Is if we take previous month range, right, let's get rid of all them. Okay, if you take previous month range, where does Ada look like it's trending towards? Do you think? Right, and again, obviously it's the same with a lot of altcoins. Does Ada in this monthly candle look like it's coming to this low, or does it look like it's coming towards this high? So there's previous month low and previous month high. You can see we're trading above the equilibrium level. Well, we're going towards previous month high, aren't we? That's what we're going for. We're going for previous month high. Obviously, again, it's like with a lot of altcoins, it's been very, very choppy over the last few months. Relatively speaking, on a monthly time frame, it's been super choppy. We've not really had the big explosive candles. So, we're coming towards this previous month high, which should push back above $1. And then obviously what you want to actually target is the high over here. So I'm still thinking $1.80 ultimately for Ada. Before any meaningful pullback, I was actually thinking $1.80 early 2024 too. So yeah, I think we're coming for this previous month high. See what the reaction is from previous month high. Weekly time frame. I mean, weekly time frame is just very, very choppy as well. Weekly candle. Again, you just pull out the previous week range, which is there, and you go previous week high, previous week low. Where does price look like it's drawing to? Well, it looks like it's coming for previous week high. Okay, so then where would you like to see the candle bodies close? Yeah, well, you'd like to see the candle, this weekly candle close above this previous week high. Okay, and then you're going for previous month high. Okay, we've still got plenty of time for that. But yeah, anyway, so there is, yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to, I think, cover at this point. I think it's been, a good session. I definitely wanted to get sort of where my positioning is definitely at the moment across to everyone, and hopefully everyone else is sort of like positioned very similar, as should I say. But it's one of these things. It's sort of market is just consolidating still. A lot of altcoins are consolidating. We're trading equilibrium of a lot of these previous week ranges, previous month ranges. Yes, we're targeting towards the highs. We know Q4 is going to be bullish, or it should be seasonally bullish. But like a lot of our buying's done, and a lot of your buying should be done already. So you kind of should just be positioned long and waiting for the hopefully out season. So yeah, I think we will end it. I think we'll end it there. Is there any questions? If there is any questions, we can go through. We can go through some questions first. If not, we can close up. Oh, perfect. Good stuff. Yeah, okay. Well, I've got the recording for the session, so you'll be able to watch the first half. I'll get that up on the WAP. So if you don't know how to access the recordings on the WAP, then just give me a shout. I'll message when I put it up, and then I'll help you out. Okay. So at least then you can watch the first half. Okay then, cool. Perfect, no problem. Right, cool then, gents. Well, we'll leave it there. You have a good rest of your day, rest of your week. We'll probably get another session in sometime this week. Yeah. All right, cheers. Thank you all.